their houses became overcrowded, and their offspring became too many. Today, it's so difficult for us to maintain 5, 6 people in a family. So imagine if there is no death, right? The houses become overcrowded. A man, the Imam said this to the people, the people during his time. A man had to feed his father, had to feed his mother, had to feed his grandfather, had to feed his great-grandfather, and they also had to satisfy them and take care of them. And therefore they became too occupied to seek a livelihood. So then they came again to the Prophet and say to the Prophet, ask your Lord to return us to the previous state. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returned them to the previous state. What do we learn from this tradition? What we learn from this tradition is that death is nothing but a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yes.
This is according to Al-Qur'an, that is the soul of every man is a taster, and death is just a taste. Like we eat food every day, we have a taste.
Correct.
Death is just like food, we taste it. It doesn't mean we die.
Yes. Very good. Now, our fourth Imam alayhi salam, he was asked about that. And he said, for a believer, death is like taking off his dirty clothes, undoing the shackles and the chains around his neck and legs, and changing him into the finest, and changing his clothes into the finest and most scented clothes. And as for the disbelievers, it is like taking off their fine clothes and transferring them from their comfortable positions and changing into the dirtiest and roughest of clothes, the most terrifying of stations and the greatest of punishments. In a way, the Imam is telling us, death for a believer is like a wedding night. He doesn't fear death. Many times, when we go and visit the sick people, because it is recommended. This is the hukukun nas, that we need to maintain the justice between the people. One of their rights, one of the rights of a sick person is that we should visit. And if we cannot visit them, we should pray for them. So what do we do when we go and visit them? We have to give them these kinds of encouragement. Our seventh Imam, Imam Al-Qadim alayhi salam, salawat ala when he visited a person during his time who was immersed in the pangs of death, he said, death is the purifier which purifies the believers from sins, so that it is the last pain that they are struck with, as atonement for the last wrongdoing of their life. So imagine, when we see a sick person going through so much pain, and you all know my brother, may Allah has mercy on his soul, inshallah. For the past 4 months, he was in so much pain that when I used to speak to him on the phone, with difficulty he used to answer and say things. So I asked him, I said, how do you feel? He said, you don't know the kind of pain I'm going through, the agony that I'm going through. But what I'm told by my relatives, that not a single moment in these 4 months he ever complained to Allah. And all the time he used to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he told me most recently, last Sunday when I called him, he said, Ali, the agony that I'm going through. Sometimes when the doctors come to visit me, they see me in that agony because they can make out from my face. And they sympathize with me. But the next minute I'm smiling. And they are baffled. They are asking me, why are you laughing and smiling? And I replied to the doctors and I told them that you don't know what I can see. What did my brother mean by that? You know, most likely when he was going through this affliction and the pain, he could see the ease with the pain. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. You know, I really admire his courage. So the Imam say, it is the last pain, the death, when death comes to a person who is going through the pain in the sickness, it is the last pain as the atonement for the last wrongdoing of their life. So while they're going through the pain, Allah is erasing their wrongdoings. And when death comes, because obviously there is one last wrongdoing of that person that has to be erased. And how is it erased? And that is why Allah has ordained death. Death then erases that last wrongdoing of the person that is left in that person. For the disbeliever, the same Imam say, death strips them of their good deeds. So it is the last pleasure or leisure that they will experience. And it will be the last reward for any good deed that they perform in this life. There is nothing for them in the hereafter. Salawat ala Muhammad wa alihi.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
When a family is afflicted, when a family goes through the grief of death, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves someone who exercises patience. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. It's in the Quran. And give good news to the patient one. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّ لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّ إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Brothers and sisters, you won't believe. This afternoon when I was having my cup of tea in the office before I got the news about my brother, it's only 6 hours he has passed away. I was sitting with one Egyptian brother. He's a Sunni brother, with all due respect. We talk to each other many times. We pray together in the same room. And he knows about my brother. So we were talking at that time. And we were talking about what a person goes through when he experiences pain and when he goes to the sakaratul maut. Because when I talked to my brother 3-4 days ago, he was wishing us goodbye. He said, these are my last days. And I knew that he was going through the sakaratul maut. So this brother was telling me that the best thing that you all can do for him is to say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We shook hands. He went his way, I went my way. I took the lift. As I was coming out of the lift, my eldest sister calls me and tells me, our brother has passed. It was during that time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rightfully says in the Quran, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّ لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّ إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. We cannot avoid at this juncture to remember our dear Imam Hussein. When he was going from Mecca to Medina, during the journey, he was repeatedly mentioning, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And his young son, Ali Akbar, was asking him, he says, oh my dear father, what are you uttering during this journey? I can see you murmuring something. And he said, oh my dear son, what I'm saying is, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. From Allah we come and to Allah we return. So the young son, Ali Akbar, the son of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, says to his father, he says, oh father, this means that death is approaching us. He says, yes, you're right. He said, then we should be happy. Can you imagine? This is the young son, Ali Akbar. In the plains of Karbala, his nephew, Qasim, the son of Imam Hussein, comes when he asks permission from Imam Hussein to go and fight in the battle against the enemies. The young Qasim is taking permission from his uncle. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam is asking Qasim, Kaifa indal maut, ya Qasim? How do you understand death? And the young Qasim said, Al-maut ahla min al-asr. Death is sweeter than honey. My dear brothers and sisters, it is during this time that we need to remember death. In fact, we need to remember death every day. And we should try and overcome that. How do we overcome that? That's a major question. The only way we can overcome that is when we constantly perform good deeds, so that Allah can show us the reality of the hereafter. And when we see the reality, we will long for it. And that is how we can overcome that. Finally, I won't take much time. There is a very interesting tradition of our first Imam, Ali alayhi salam, that I want to mention. The Imam said that when death approaches a person, 3 things come in front of his face. What are these 3 things? The first thing is his property and wealth. And he will say to his property and wealth that now death has approached me. What can you do for me? When I was alive, I used to take good care of you. I used to preserve you. I used to lock you in a safe place so that no one takes you away from me. What can you do for me? And the wealth and the property will reply to this person that there is nothing we can do. But there is one small thing we can do for you today, and that is to pay for your grave. Because even death is very costly these days. To die is also costly, as you all know. Then the second thing that will be in front of him, the Imam saying, are his family members. And he will plead to his family members. He said that when I was alive, I spent so much time to take care of you. I took so much trouble to earn a living for you all. What can you do for me today? He will plead to his family members. And they will reply that there is nothing we can do. The only thing we can do is to transport your body to the grave. That's all we can do for you. Then the Imam said, there is a third thing that will come in front of his face, and that is his deeds. And he will say to his actions and deeds, what can you do for me today? The deeds and the actions will say to him, from now onwards, we will accompany you until the day of judgment. Until the day you are raised. And then when Malakul Maut takes his soul, this person, he will recognize the people who are washing his body. And if he was a good person, he will say to the people who are washing his body, why are you taking so much time? Can you do it faster? Because I can see what is waiting for me, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is Ar-Rahman, right? He is Ar-Rahim and Ar-Rahman. And we are Marhum. And the meaning of that is, why we are called Marhum is because we are constantly seeking His mercy. And that is why we are Marhum. And He is Ar-Rahman. So He will say to the people who are washing His body, why are you doing it so slow? Because I have the desire to taste the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as for the one who was an evildoer, he will recognize the people who are washing his body. And he will say to the people, why are you doing it so fast? Make it slow. Because I don't want to go down there soon. Because I know what is waiting for me. My dear brothers and sisters, we should remind ourselves of that all the time. And I thank you all for your prayers on behalf of my family in Sydney and in the USA and in Canada. You know, I have family all over the world. Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us with a very big family and we are spread all over the world. Probably there is a reason for that. But I thank you all on behalf of my family members for all your prayers, because I have received a response from them. When I talk to them, you know what they tell me? He says, most likely it is the prayers of our well-wishers and our friends that has made us patient during this time. When we see a person who is going through so much difficulty and sickness, what we learn from such a person is nothing but patience. And it is the prayers of everyone who has been praying very, very hard. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rest his soul in peace and tranquility. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Salawatullah Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.